So our chair, when the main two chairs aren't here, it defaults to Alex. So Alex, do you want to call the meeting to order?
All right, we will call the April 7th, 2022 Ohio City Design Review meeting to order. You can call the roll.
Thank you. Doug Wall, Margaret Land,
Present.
Antonio Marinucci, Chris Lozier,
Present.
Alex Frondorf,
Present.
Marika Clark.
Present.
All right, let me share my screen and we'll begin. Our first applicant is 3408 Clinton Avenue.
Hello, everybody. I'm Greg Soltis, and then Matt Weimer's on the Zoom as well.
Hey, everyone.
So, Nate, did you want to go through the slides that we've already reviewed before with everyone again, or?
If there's any changes to this one, we'll go through it. I know you sent me a second presentation which is just one slide.
Yep.
If that's what you want to go through, then we can also do that, but it
Yeah,
might
they're
help to
both-
refresh.
You can go through the changes since our last design review and highlight those for us. Any changes that were made, any changes were made in response to comments from committee members.
Okay. All right, well, then I suppose we can slip through or pass through the context, because we reviewed all of this last time. And I think everybody understands the context. And so the biggest change when we get down to we should pause here just real quick, go back up. So one more slide, Nate, there we go. So just, to refresh and review again, like the historic imagery that we were looking at when thinking about the front historic property. We've since embellished the architecture more to try to bring it more closer to a high style Greek revival, I guess you could say. And that was with the help of Alex. So you'll see that later, but I just wanted to reference this slide so you could see some of the things that we were originally referencing. And if you can move down, Nate. And I don't know, Matt, if you want to talk about existing conditions, or did we go through this last time?
We went through it last time. I think the changes are probably the key elements to go
Okay.
through now, like Alex suggested. And
Okay.
the main change you'll notice, since we were here previously, is a slightly larger addition in the rear of the property.
Yeah, if you could scroll down one more, Nate. So the footprint is the same when you're looking at the footprint of how the building sits on the site. And then scroll one more, Nate. So the addition of a second floor on the rear building, which is a completely brand new building, is the change. And you'll see up on the top left of the slide here. So the concept for extruding that building upwards was to almost mirror the courtyard, the garden courtyard patio, but mirror it on the other side of the courtyard on the second level. And then so you can see the garden terrace there on the second floor plan. And then there's a indoor room that looks out to the terrace that would be all glass, and then 2 bedrooms and a bathroom up there. So if you scroll down, Nate. This was some of the transition. We were just studying a lot of different transitional sort of architecture, so that we could create something that felt as if it was of our time, but still spoke to the historic building that it was, brother or sister to. Next slide, Nate. The materials, that we plan to use are Pella windows reserved traditional for the front house and Pella reserved contemporary for the rear house, in classic white with either slate gray or black window frames, but white for the door, and more of a traditional looking door handle with a escutcheon behind it. Next slide. And then for the materials, we were planning on using Aspire cement fiberboard siding which is Hardy Board's higher end line of cement fiberboard siding. I got to go on a tour of a Hardy factory a couple of years ago, which was actually really great. They'd make a really great product, a variety of products, not just the, the typical stuff you see going up on everyday houses. So we're going to use the Arctic White and either do a shiplap or V-groove siding is the plan. Next slide. And it would be like panels on the back house. And the garage door would be this Clopay modern steel. So it's a contemporary garage door, but very simple. And then for molding details, we were going to use True Exterior, which is a fly ash board material. So it's recycled fly ash composite, and it acts very much like wood. Like the carpenters can actually cut it in the field. They have to wear a mask when they do it because it's got compounds in it, the fly ash, but they can cut it in the field. It can be painted, it can be sanded just like wood is, but it's much more durable, and it could literally sit in water for years and it won't like deteriorate or warp. Next slide. And then for the lighting accents, we were basically, the concept is like taking an old lantern and having a contemporary interpretation of an old lantern for the sconces that would be on the side of the building. Next slide. So this is the updated south facade elevation without the new architecture that's on the front building, but I have that in something that I sent to Nate that we can look at after we get through these slides. But you can see the house in the back. Obviously, an elevation view is a forced sort of view. So it's not like you're going to see the house in the back this way, but this kind of geometrically, it kind of shows the shapes and how they relate to each other. Next slide. And then this is what they look like from the side. So you can see like on the top slide, it's the same sort of consistent treatment where we're planning on basically letting it be more of a wall that's softened up by these trellises and plant material out of respect for the neighbor's backyard. But we do have one window as you get close to the alley. On the bottom, you can see the openings that would be on the building, and then the garden terrace on the second floor that is a mirror of the terrace or the patio, sort of courtyard patio on the first floor. But otherwise, the architecture is, the language is the same, it's just extruded up. Next slide. And then, facing the alley would be basically the same architecture, but again, extruded up, 2 windows added for the bedroom. Next slide. And then these are some perspective slides that show everything as it relates to each other. So this would be an aerial looking, from Clinton Avenue to see that in the back. Aerial from the alley. A view you truly would never see, but this is because that industrial building is right next door, but just so that we could understand the massing and how everything relates to each other. Next slide. Same sort of condition here, but over the alley. Getting a little bit lower. And then I believe, this is what you would really see from the sidewalk. And then as you walk down the alley, you'd see that. So you could look up and see the terrace up there. And again, that's the alley view. And then looking out the bedroom to the courtyard. Yeah, and there's the updated architecture, which kind of tries to take the Greek Revival style up a notch and move it more into a high style architecture instead of something that was more, I guess, Alex, would you call it vernacular, as simple as it was before, or is it still not vernacular, but just a simplified Greek Revival?
I think you've captured well. I think the Greek Revival style, you have the rake of the pediment there continuing in the return, that would make up the entablature of that horizontal bar. I think that looks good. What material would that be made out of?
That would be the fly ash board material. So it looks like wood, it functions like wood, it takes paint, but it won't warp or wear like wood does.
Okay. And it's smooth, it's not a faux grained?
Yeah, it's smooth. I hate faux grains.
Thank you. And then I know you covered the windows in the back, but the windows in the front, are those also Pella?
Yes, they would be the reserve, but they're, they're the line that you can use for historic buildings.
Okay, with exterior buttons.
Yeah, yes.
And is that, you have the fence on the drawing, is that part of the overall application as well?
Yes, we'd like it to be for sure.
Okay, and is that just a standard wood fence,
Yes.
painted white, that's the material? Okay. All right, and then the major addition from last time, in addition to those details on the front, you have added a second story to the back. But if I read the plans right, that second story is about 50 feet or so off of the historic house.
Yeah, yes. Because it's I think I can measure it real quick in the
No, no,
model.
that's fine. I think I got that right. I just,
Nate,
wanna
can you
make
just go
sure.
back to the plan, one of the plan views?
because I think that separation, that 50 feet or so, is really important and key in not having it dominate over the historic structure. And that was my one concern when I initially saw this was, oh, this is going to dominate the historic structure. But I think that separation there gives it enough that it will not do that from the street.
No, I mean, you're really gonna have to look down that little alley to see it in the back there.
Okay. And then the front of the house maintains are you doing hardy board on that, or are you doing real wood? You may have said this, and I apologize.
No, that we were gonna use the Aspire hardy board for the front house.
And
And you said you're gonna do a shiplap style siding for the
That's the,
front house. Is that right?
yeah, that's the plan unless you all recommend something else. Like the shiplap or the groove is what we were thinking.
yeah, you want them slightly overlaying one another.
Okay,
The back part is fine.
okay, yeah, we'll make sure that it does that then.
I mean, I personally would be okay with the shiplap, but I think to me, it would look a little bit more modern than the more traditional overlap.
Yeah, right, yeah, it would. We'll make it look more traditional. And then we can use
If you're
the,
getting those traditional elements on, especially with the cornice and whatnot, it would look, I think. I don't think
Yeah,
it would look as good as if you went the other direction.
yeah, agreed.
And then my final question, then I'll shut up. The trellises that you see there, are you envisioning those as wood trellises or some sort of metal lattice work, or what are you envisioning there?
We were envisioning a metal trellis work. There was a product that we had looked up, and part of that was so that they would, you know how wood trellises can really start to look kind of ratty very quickly.
That's what I'm asking, yes.
Yeah. So part of that was that, they wouldn't look ratty, but then part of that is also that they would maybe potentially somewhat disappear in the wintertime if the plant material is not an evergreen plant material.
Great. Okay, and then those will just be fixed directly to the house?
Yes.
I don't think I have any other questions.
I just have a quick question with the true exterior, the trim material. I know you said that the carpenters could shape it in the field. Is it also paintable?
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
It's a really amazing material, other than the fact that the carpenters have to wear masks when they work with it. And like I said, you can sit it in water and it doesn't bubble up, it doesn't deteriorate. It's pretty cool material. I've used it on projects before and it works really nicely.
And on the historic structure, all the trim will be white.
Yes.
Can you just remind me, I know you already went over this on the previous one, but the new addition, that's a metal standing seam. Is that what that facade is? Or can you remind me?
You mean for the roof?
No, the walls, is that,
I don't remember.
Oh, it would be cement fiberboard panels, because Hardy
Oh.
makes they have
I
like
didn't-
in
the
there,
way it's drawn.
yeah, there would be like a U channel there, or a C
Okay.
channel, whatever you want to call it, that would hold the panels in place, but just be a little reveal.
Oh, okay. I see. Got it.
And then we'll develop on that. And then the roof material, is that just shingle?
Yes. I mean, unless the client decides to spring for, metal roofing, but
And were you gonna do black shingle?
or like more like a dark warm gray is what we're showing.
Well, I, for one, think that this project is a nice example of how to respect the historic structure and incorporate, something modern. I think it's going to be a really good addition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very thoughtfully designed, and I think all the lines are very clean, and I don't know, just has I feel like the proportions work really nicely with this and with the original building. So I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to echo those comments as well. I appreciate the fact that you're using higher end durable materials that are going to last. I appreciate the complementary forms between the historic, existing, and the new. I think there's a really nice juxtaposition now that you've sort of added additional detail to the historic house. That sort of further defines the historic from the contemporary new. I think the only comment that I would have, which echoes what Alex and others had said, was I think that lap siding on the historic house is probably more in line with historic look of what would have been there originally. But I think this is a really nice package, and I think it's going to fit very nicely within the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I would just note too, and I've noted this at a prior presentation, that normally, when a development would occupy so much of the lot, that would raise a flag. I just want to reiterate the distinction in my thinking here, that you're saving this historic house and adding in the lot is already exceedingly narrow, and that those distinguishing factors make this treatment here more appropriate.
Thank you.
I see Doug is now on the call. Doug, if you'd like me to hand over the chair role to you, I'm happy to.
Oh, why don't you, since I joined late, I apologize. I was on another conference call. I guess I'd just like to confirm, based on a little bit of the tail end of the conversation I was here for, is this, are they looking for a final review here, or is this more preliminary? Because I still see some from the questions that I've heard, some lack of definition on some of the elements here. And in other words, like the question about the roof shingles, said, well, it might be something like this, that we don't see exact selections on some of these things, or the trellis elements that were brought up. So is this another preliminary review, or are they asking for a final vote from us?
We're seeking final approval.
Well, then it seems to me, unless I missed something, that we're short some material selections. Is that fair, or did I miss that part of the conversation?
I think there may have been a misstatement earlier. The roof, as shown in the presentation, is our intention for the project, as opposed to a metal roof.
But you haven't said, here's the brand and color and so forth. Did you? Is that in here someplace? Actual material selections and colors?
Not for the shingles, for, I think, everything else.
All right. Well, you have furnished a lot of detail on other materials and products. So if I guess I wouldn't have a problem if we go ahead and vote on this, but I would say you should provide answers to those questions for landmarks.
Certainly.
Alex, is that okay? Does that sound fair to you?
Yeah, I think that if we entertain a motion, that it could include providing those specific details to landmarks, and if they are deviated from, just coming back to us at a later point. And those materials are the roof, the exact shingle type, because obviously there are different types of shingles. And then also with the trellis work, are you thinking of the metal being wire, being metal rods? How will that look visually? Get a little more granular in the detail with materials and what it will look like in your presentation of landmarks. And if that changes from that, to come back again. If that's a fair compromise.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yep.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
All right. Well, then if that's if there are no more questions, Nate, would you call the roll, please?
I think we need a motion to approve first.
Oh, we need a motion. Yes. Who would like to make a motion?
Make the motion to approve contingent on the Greek revival structure having the lap siding
We have a
and
second.
understanding that additional material selection will be presented to landmarks.
One care to second that?
I'm not acting as chair anymore. I will second that.
All right, great. So the motion is to approve with the conditions of providing detail on the roof type and material and the trellis material, and making sure the lap siding is on the historic structure. So I'll call the roll. Doug Wall,
Yes.
Margaret Land,
Yes.
and Tony Marinucci,
Yes.
Chris Lozier,
Yes.
Alex Frondorf,
Yes.
and Marika Clark.
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you, Greg and Matt.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So our next applicant is the Bridgeworks project. And I would just say that Marika has to recuse herself from this project. But we will go ahead and hear this now.
I'll let the design team here run with the presentation.
All right. Thank you, Graham. Jonathan Evans here, principal with Mass Design Group. I'm joined here with Dominic Durante from LDA, as well as Brett Klinger from Turner, part of the overall project team here. Excited to be back in front of you guys to present some of the updates here on the project. If you want to go to the next slide. So again, I think this is kind of a context image here. I think we're excited about the potential of this project, really kind of creating this amazing kind of hinge between, downtown right at the edge of the Ohio City neighborhood here. Next slide. And again, you can kind of see here just how this works to kind of in some ways create an icon, create a moment here at the corner of Detroit and 25th, this large building. I think the next slide here will be good because this shows kind of where we were. Kind of last week we met with you all. So again, just as a reminder, the project is an exciting combination of mixed income housing, hotel space, and public realm improvements to in some ways set the table for the potential connection to the underbridge at the Detroit Superior Bridge. What you see here on that image, actually, can you stay there for one more second, please? So what you see highlighted in red are a couple of components that we are changing just to sort of flag that. One, starting at the lower left is the Art Deco building. We affectionately call the 1940s, 50s era garage building, as well as in the rear there, the sort of garage program for the building. If you go to the next image, you can see how we started to have to modify that. Excuse me, getting over a cold here. So upon further investigation on site and with the contractor, it has been concluded that the Art Deco building is going to be difficult, pretty much impossible to save and preserve. So we are excited to preserve the existing ticket booth building as kind of a way to again, create that kind of connection to the site and the history of the site. And so rehabilitating that, but that Art Deco garage facade that we were hoping to preserve, it's frankly not going to be in the cards to be able to keep that. So that shows that space going away. What you see now is a kind of clearer public connection from the plaza at the front of 25th and Detroit back to the rear of the site, and again trying to welcome or invite that connection to the underbridge. Another change you can see here as well is the garage massing itself. Initially it was kind of a saddlebag at the rear of the tower. Here now we've kind of pushed it off to the side, creating a cleaner public space to kind of in between the garage and our tower. Again on access with that underbridge opening. There was constructability difficulties with underground utility lines that sort of made it very difficult to have a garage in that previous location. So again, the separate garage kind of allows this tower to actually be a lot cleaner of a form. And in some ways, this was a good opportunity to take a half a step back a little bit and reconsider the kind of the architectural language a little bit. So instead of the previous design, you kind of had these sort of stacked boxes kind of working together and kind of a collage of different cladding systems. What we looked at doing here is kind of creating a singular, more iconic expression with the kind of a window wall facade here that you can see here. Next slide. So again, this is that same, this kind of looks at it from the other view, back from Vermont Avenue. So again, you can see here that space that's now created and enhanced between the building and the garage, opening into the underbridge. And again, the overall massing of the tower kind of stays the same. So we still have that setback on this northern facade here. We like the kind of sheer wall that's created along the bridge side, a kind of iconic face there. And again, so you still have that public space that we're creating as part of the commercial program at that 11th floor. And you can see a grade here, hotel drop off right off the viaduct in the middle there. Next slide. So again, this survey kind of clarifies, again, existing site survey, what is going to be demolished. So essentially, initially the thought was to, if I can annotate, I think initially we were hoping to just demolish, and I think we received permission to demolish just the sort of later annex to that building. But again, upon further investigation, the whole thing is going to be infeasible to keep in place. So we're looking to get rid of that entire building.
And again, we have Brett Klinger from Turner here also, who I think can speak to some of the structural issues that he's been kind of coordinating with the structural engineer, and also just from some more kind of investigation of the building. So that can happen like after you're done, John Evans, but I just want to make sure that that's clear, that he's also here and can speak to that aspect.
Right, thanks, Marika. Next slide. Again, so you can see here again the sort of overall axon, the aerial view of what we're keeping with the ticket booth, and just that we need to extend the extent of what's going to be demolished to include the entire Art Deco garage. Next slide. So this what you see here is a rendering of what we're proposing. Again, as I kind of alluded to earlier, again, taking a step back, instead of having the sort of box on box with the garage saddlebag, looking at a kind of cleaner aesthetic with sort of a one unified system with the window wall. What you can see here also is playing with patterning with how kind of solid panels as well work to kind of create a layer of animation within that facade. And again, off to the page right, you have the garage, and I think we're looking at opportunities to really kind of cloud that with art to make that a kind of iconic feature as well. But I think one thing you can see that we're excited about is really the enhancement of the public realm. Again, it's a significant amount of open space, both coming in off 25th in Detroit, bringing you through the site to the underbridge, and then again that space between the tower and the garage. And then the next slide shows the kind of reverse image view of that.
Can I interrupt you before we, while we're still on that slide? From
Sure.
our field trip out there, what I want to clarify is you've still got a piece, as we talked about how the existing building is, pretty much right up against the bridge structure, and you wanted to create some space in there to make it more workable. Yet I still see a piece of structure here that's partly has a green roof on it it looks like it's still really close to the bridge structure. Could you speak to that for a minute? How much separation actually is there between the bridge and what you're proposing?
Yeah, I think that's probably a reflection of the rendering angle, and I think we can show the plans in a couple of slides here that'll show that we've got a pretty good separation between the proposed new structure and the bridge structure.
And is there any thought to, you know, another thing we discussed at some length was referencing the building you're going to tear down with the stone on it in this. Is there something here later that speaks to that?
Yeah, great question. And I think I got word of that, and again, sorry I couldn't be out there for that visit. I believe this deck was again submitted, you know, ahead of that conversation, so it's not in this deck, but that's certainly something that we are taking to heart. And I think we always want to find ways to acknowledge the place, right? So I think if we can find ways to preserve some of that stone, whatever's feasible, and have that be part of what you sort of see at the public realm, so you have that connection to the past. I think that's definitely something that we want to create an opportunity to celebrate. And again, it gives you a nice texture right at that human scale. So that's definitely on our list to incorporate and find the best place to do that.
Okay.
In fact, this is Dominic. We want to bring the stone not only on the outside, but also bring it on the inside to be part of the interior lobby, a feature of the hotel as well. So we do intend to reuse that stone in both interior and exterior.
Okay, thanks, Darren.
Yeah, thanks, Dom. And then again, this is that sort of reverse view here. Again, what you see in the foreground off of Vermont Ave is the porte cochere kind of drop off for the hotel. Again, ground floor hotel space, giving away as you move up the building to the residential, and then hotel above. You know, again, taking this window wall, creating a kind of logical framework for that, and then within that framework, again, being a little bit playful and finding ways to create a pattern of solid void spandrel panels as well. For that. Moving out to the corner, again, we have that sort of corner retail space, commercial space kind of welcoming you in from the approach from Lakeview. Again, bringing you in, having a space to kind of come into the site from that approach. Go to the next slide. This kind of shows the plan, and I think this kind of maybe addresses your comments earlier, Doug, around the space between the bridge structure and our proposed building. So yeah, again, you can see here that sort of green connection between at Page South, running below the ticket booth building, below the kind of where we're showing cafe seating, and then out to the space behind the garage at the rear. Again, really creating almost kind of 360 degrees of a kind of public space. There really isn't a back door to the site, which is made some things challenging, but in some ways it's also exciting in terms of what this can do for the neighborhood.
And Jonathan, may I just also add,
please.
You can see from this picture, this slide, that the ticket booth will become more prominent now, Doug, as you go from downtown out to the west. You know, the two-story portion of the Deco building was right up on the sidewalk, so it visually was actually a blockage to the ticket booth. But now you can see with this picture that the ticket booth will be more prominent.
Yeah, that's great to flag, Dom. I think certainly every time I go to the site, one thing that is striking is frankly how the site is big, but it's also pretty small. And so I think the previous iteration where we had the ticket booth, the Art Deco, and our product with the garage, it was a lot on a small site. And so I think this in some ways better sets off that ticket booth and allows the architecture to kind of more cleanly frame that and celebrate that piece. Next slide. So this one here starts to get at some of the sort of circulation patterns. Again, really trying to provide clean access to the building through the site. I think one thing that you can start to see here on this diagram is trying to sort of bring back the old viaduct road as kind of a throughway for pedestrian movement through the site, coming from the south. So again, really trying to make the buildings feel pretty porous and welcoming from all approaches. Next, and then from a vehicular standpoint, again, trying to provide clear access into the garage, and then sort of, again, the hotel loading off the lobby off of Vermont Avenue there as well. And you can see here we've got the parallel spots along Vermont as well. And then finally, from a loading delivery standpoint, which would be the next slide. Again, to my other point, how there really isn't much of a back door here. We kind of have one access here that brings you into a covered zone here at the rear of the hotel for all kind of hotel and residential loading, delivery, movement, stuff like that. And again, here just sort of an enlarged plan here. We can go through this quick, but just kind of left to right, commercial space, hotel lobby, and then the residential lobby off to the right. Again, that sort of extension southward is going to be a lot of the servicing back of house space for the hotel. Down below, basement level, you got a lot of building services, building support, and hotel amenity, hotel support features. And then moving up the building, again, we're looking at a total of about 140 units. Again, this is the second floor plan. So you see here the provisions around creating an opportunity to kind of have a clean connection to that residential deck on top of that addition there. And you can see, just for kind of reference and scale, the ticket booth at the lower left there. Moving up, levels 3 through 10 of the building. Level 11, moving up, is the restaurant level. Again, with this is where the building starts to step back in its shape, giving way to a nice deck with views of downtown and the lake. And then finally, the hotel, typical hotel floor plate above that. And then, yeah. So this is kind of the view of the drop off. Again, you've got the window wall frame. You can see the various panels for, again, spandrel glass, vision glass, as well as some solid panels that start to create a pattern there. Excuse me. Next slide, stepping back again. So again, a lot of the same massing cues are taken from the previous iteration. Again, really just I think we like how it's now simplified within this one singular language of the sort of window wall facade with the sort of frame expression. And then finally, yeah, and then this is the view again. This view, I think in some ways it's nice. It shows the sort of step down as we get to the church. There, in some ways, you can see a little bit of a taking cues in terms of the form, in terms of the spire there, and how the hotel massing works. And then another view here from the bridge. Excuse me. Yeah, okay, so then from the material standpoint, again, we're looking at aluminum wall panels, vision glass, spandrel glass, and then storefront as well for the retail pavilion on the ground level retail pavilion there. So that's kind of the color palette that we're looking at. And then next, you can see next slide. Just some precedent imagery in terms of the color, the finish. Again, creating a little bit of texture by having complementary colors working with each other on the building. And I believe that's it. So.
Well, I think logically, I think we should address the demolition request first prior to getting into the building alterations, because I think that might have some bearing on the rest of the project. During our site visit on last week, I agree that the interior, there's not much there, if anything there, of historical note, but the exterior is a different matter. And just as the prior applicant came with a Greek revival that initially the new owners wanted to demolish, and we said no, you know, that structure is even less historically significant than this one. This Art Deco is built in approximately 1941. It is an excellent bridge architecturally between the neoclassical and Beaux-Arts that we find in Cleveland at the beginning of the 20th century. And then as we move into the latter half of the 20th century, this building fits that niche architecturally and tells the story. It evokes a Doric order. There are fluted pilasters evoking the columns. There's triglyphs on the building evoking a Doric entablature across the front. There are Art Deco elements on the corners. All of this showing a transition from a classical, even Beaux-Arts, into a more postmodern or more modern architectural period. And I think that this building is right at that transition point and is an excellent architectural style of what it is. And I think we would be amiss to allow wholesale demolition. Now, I know that there's, plans or talk of incorporating the stonework and other aspects of it, but the renderings that we have now, there's only, I believe, one panel shown on the renderings that we received yesterday. And talking of classical, just as Aristotle said, a swallow does not make a summer. One panel does not make preservation. And while I think, based on the comments from the site visit, we'd be willing to work with, just saving the facade and not the building itself, or other potential options, willing to work with you. I think we need to see more of the historic facade there incorporated or preserved.
Or some more reference to it. When I look at what is on the south side of your elevation now, I see a glass curtain wall and then landscaping. I don't see any means by which this is you're creating a reference to it, in terms of scale, massing, material, nothing. And so I missed the part of the additional. I saw the new elevations you sent along the other day, but I also didn't see that. I just see a reference to like 360 square feet of stone. Just the maybe like a fireplace in the lobby or something like that. Am I understanding that correctly? That the only stone being proposed to salvage and reuse now is 360 square feet to be located somewhere in the lobby?
Jonathan, you want to, or
Go for it, Dom, and I'll
Marika?
follow.
Well, Doug, I think we still, we don't have that resolved yet. I mean, we want to incorporate as much of the stone as we can into the design of the building, both on the inside and the outside. So I think 360 square feet is not necessarily the right quantity of stone. So I think that's still undecided. So I think that's the answer. We still are undecided about how much stone we want to use. So I'm sorry, I don't have a precise answer for you right now at this time.
I can speak to this a little bit. I just don't know, like, whatever. I think what Steve had sent along was one option of what could work, or one possibility, which was the 350 square feet was basically if we were to take the kind of south wall of the one-story building, which was shown on one of the renderings, and basically clad and try to replicate maybe a portion of that stone patterning on that like fireplace wall, which is interior exterior. So essentially it bridges, it would be like an entire mass essentially, that spans both sides of the southern wall, and that square footage is 350 square feet. I think another thing which, Brett, I'd like to jump in here is, I think there's some concern around how much of the stone will actually be salvageable once, once any work started and there was actually more kind of.
Oh, as is, not even when works.
Right.
No, but I think that what Brett doesn't know right now, and the engineers don't know right now, is how much of that stone is salvageable. So the 350 square feet, I think he was even like, part of it is really just not knowing how much of the stone is going to actually crumble or fall apart or not really be reusable. So I think that's an important part of what needs to be taken into account. It's really not just that we don't want to keep the garage, which I think is kind of, I think that's not at all an accurate portrayal of what the current conditions are. This building is in very bad shape, and we would essentially, as a reminder, need to remove the entire facade, probably still replace a large amount of the stonework, which I think we all agreed that the exterior was really the only part of the building that is historically significant. And then there's just a lot of, Brett, could you speak to this? I think that I don't think it's really just, this is not just like, we don't think it's important and so we're going to get rid of it. It's like the building is in bad shape.
Yeah, so this is Brett with Turner. I guess I'll start with, we've spent a better part of the last 3 years working on how can we save this element and live within the budget, right? So we've done a lot of existing conditions investigations since the ownership group took over this site, and things have continued to be found. So as we mentioned, as we were on site last week, as you guys, those that were there saw, a lot of the shelf angles are deteriorating, lintels are deteriorating, and that's causing spalling on the existing stone. So to Marika's point, in order to fully preserve this, we would essentially have to remove all of the existing stone, replace shelf angles, steel, so on and so forth behind it. And then depending on how much stone is actually salvageable, we would have to replace with new stone as well. And candidly, that's just not financially feasible. So at the end of the day, we have done our due diligence, and we do have concerns about the existing stone as well. And I think that was pretty evident at the walkthrough, and you could see the pictures I had sent over as well, that Steve, I believe, forwarded to this group. Some of the parapet walls are leaning and things of that nature too. So it's not that we're trying to find excuses to demolish this. We tried for 3 years to figure out how we can incorporate this and save it, but from a financial standpoint, it just wasn't making sense. And then on top of that, there's what wasn't discussed today, but there's the entire easement that is along that south building, along the bridge, that ODOT has for maintenance of that bridge. And as you could tell, for those that were out there, there's only 12 inches between that building and the bridge. And how we renovate that scope of work, or how we perform that scope of work, is something that we candidly can't do unless that bridge is removed. So those are some of the factors that have led us down this road as we've been able to further investigate the building.
Yeah, I don't think it's an aesthetic thing. I think it's a feasibility thing. So, Alex, all of your points, were accurate in terms of, what it was when it was, a functioning streetcar garage. But I think we can point our finger at the sellers of the property, which was the county, that let this building and the sandstone deteriorate to a point of no return. So it's not as if, and this is something else that I think is important context for this committee, is this is the first time that we've actually been in front of you with the land and the buildings under our ownership. Prior to it, it was still during the purchase agreement phase. So we did not have full access to it. And so upon further discovery, it wasn't that we changed our aesthetic inclinations. It's that we looked at the feasibility of it and realized that, one, the deterioration was beyond repair, and two, the fact that even within the last couple of months, a car drove into it, as I'm sure you all saw. So there's a lot of factors into it that I think is important context, that needs to be accounted for.
Yeah, if I could add a couple of things. So, based on our walkthrough, I think we all understand the challenges of the existing when it comes to, it just hasn't been maintained, properly, and there's a lot of deterioration, a lot of challenges. I think when we look at the stonework itself, we recognize that there's really, two types of, if you're simplifying it, two types of stone that are used on the building. One is just flat, and then there's other stone that has sort of the decorative, sort of iconic aspects to it. I think if we could take a look at that and what the opportunities are with reusing that stone, that could be, something to take a look at. The other thing that I think we want to make sure that we also talk about is, and Doug alluded to this a little bit too, but during our walkthrough, we talked about how can we recognize the significance of this building that you're looking to remove? And I think from our perspective, we were anticipating, more thoughtfulness and more effort to recognize, either in massing or in shaping or in materiality, the fact that you're removing this iconic building. And I think, a glass curtain wall and, a portion, which appeared to us sort of a small portion of that, utilizing salvaged material, isn't meaningful enough to for at least me to say, yeah, I think that tearing this down and putting up, a small portion of what was there before, is gonna really does enough to make a nod to sort of what you're removing.
Yeah, I would just respectfully challenge the labeling of this building as iconic. Yeah, there's not a picture of it up at the airport alongside Severance Hall.
I
just for somebody who talks about this project on a daily basis, it is fascinating. The vast majority of people don't even know it exists. So I'll have to, they just think that you've got Malachi right next to the bridge. So there's not a public emotive equity with this structure. And I think that what Jonathan was trying to articulate in his presentation was the circulation on the historic viaduct, and then also in terms of the ticket booth as something that is salvageable. You're making sure that we put that effort into it so that you're giving that nod to what this place was. And then I think that the change in the massing of taking the garage and putting it kind of party wall with the SNP building, allows the entrance into the bridge, which I would argue is iconic with the arches and everything. Us stepping back and actually allowing the building to frame the bridge, and the bridge entrance and the underbridge tries to address some of those concerns. So I just want to make sure that we're being careful about how we're.
Well, yeah, and let me clarify my comments. I don't see the building itself as iconic. The building that's there now, I see that there are aspects of the building that are iconic to that era of architecture. And I think what we had talked about during the walkthrough was, is there a way to salvage those elements and find a way to either reuse them or other? And I don't know that what we've seen to date, based on the expectations during the walkthrough that we had talked about, we're seeing that reflected in what was presented today.
No, I think we need more definition here in terms of, when I say referencing, I understand that a lot of this stone. In fact, one of the things maybe you could answer it, Brett, is, in terms of estimating how much stone is salvageable from the building, do we know, anybody explored how it's actually attached to the building? Is it a full mortar bond? Are there metal pins, or do we have any idea what the original construction detail was?
Yeah, right now, based on information we've been able to gather, the stones are hung on clips, and then attached to angles on the back of the structure. So that's what we know at this time. Now, we haven't gone out there and pulled a stone yet, just because of the fragility of what we've seen, but didn't want to open up another can of worms there. But that's our anticipation and expectation of how they're attached.
All right, well, so not entirely dissimilarly from how we would fasten a stone veneer on a building today. In other words, there's a series of clips and angles and so forth, probably, that is what they use to attach it. So considering the fragility of the stone, the condition that a lot of it's falling, a lot of the edge conditions are deteriorated. I understand maybe not planning to reuse a whole lot of the original stone, but then, so secondarily becomes the point of referencing the scale and detail of the building. If, let's just say, for the sake of conversation, that we have these scallop panels running up near the parapet along the upper part of the building. Even if you can't exactly reuse those pieces, reference those somehow in the building or the site design. Maybe there's a retaining wall that's faced with a product that references that, maybe referencing the scale of the wall. We're not going to rebuild a new wall right up against the bridge, of course, that has got to be built back. But I think there are a lot of ways that one could reference this building without trying to copy it or save too much of the stone. You know, there's been so many buildings over the years, historic buildings where, gosh, we were lucky to save an entry portico off of this building. We rebuilt it someplace, and that's all you get. But there are other creative solutions to try to incorporate the feel of the building in some way that we're taking out, because it's not an iconic, really important building, but it has some period details that are kind of elegant about it. The pilasters that go up on the Vermont Avenue side kind of have a deco streamlined quality to them, and
I think it's the rhythm of fenestration. You know, there's a lot of repetition and rhythm that, you know, if you're dissecting and distilling sort of what the other architectural elements or sort of design aesthetic is, and that would be another aspect.
I would love your other committee feedback. This is, Chris, Doug, Alex, all important notes. And what I would even implore is that we don't ask this committee for a vote today on any of it, but just get additional feedback so we can come back with a further detailed set of drawings for you, because it's all warranted feedback and things that I want to get answers to.
Yeah, I agree. My position is I would like to see how you might plan to reference this building, whatever that might be. That's a pretty open-ended term, but I think there are a lot of possibilities. Nobody in this committee wants to tell you how to do it.
No, and I think we do. I think it's also part of just presenting to you guys how, and we obviously haven't done that and met that threshold. So I don't want to, I want to be considerate of everybody's time on this and come back, with something.
Could you go to slide 5? I just want to have just a suggestion that, Graham, you may find helpful, you may find completely unhelpful. Yeah, right there. So this is, I know that you have a rendering that shows more detail here, but I wanted to just look at this from a massing perspective. I mean, even if you use, just the top half or the top third of the stone, the architectural detail, to maybe wrap around that part that's closest to the bridge there, you would accomplish a couple of things. You'd get the cornice line, you get the entablature, you get a corner. You could use one of the Art Deco corners and clad it in that, and that might, I won't speak for anyone else, but that might give more of a flavor of the building that was there, and preserving the facade and clad it in that. You wouldn't need, relative to the existing building, a large percentage of its linear feet to be preservable.
That's right.
I'm just bringing that out there. That may
archaeological artifacts that you've incorporated into the building.
Yeah.
Alex, I was going to try to annotate for a second. Are you talking about this little section that pop out if you were to have that part wrap?
Yeah, I think because you would get exactly, because you could preserve a corner of the building that has that great Art Deco detailing. You would also have, I don't know how many linear feet there, both heading south and heading east, but then you would have the pilasters preserved. You would have at least a few examples of the triglyphs, because I think the language of this building, whether or not it's iconic or not, it is a great building that shows the transition of architecture from one style to the next. And enough of it needs to be preserved in one way or the other. We're not telling you, no, you can't take it down. No, everything has to be preserved. No, that's not what we're saying. But we're saying, elements of this building do need to be preserved and incorporated in some fashion, and we're willing to work with you on how that happens.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's a great again, great feedback. I think one of the, I guess, slippery slope issues is, we are going to have to take this down and then rebuild it, right? So that's, I guess I want to be careful when we use the word preserve, because we're not preserving in kind and place. We're building new to look old, right? So we're making a replica.
I heard something differently. I heard
So, yeah,
we're
but let me
preserving
please-
material, like specific materials that, be it retaining walls or as a wrapped bench knee wall, we're nodding towards the scalloped pieces that do have that iconic shapes, that Chris had referenced. So
Okay.
that's why I think that we need to react to these, and I think there's some pretty straightforward, like I'm even looking, if we go to the porte cochere render, the close up, keep going, like towards the last slide, that I think one of the critiques was, so like that go back to that one slide before, so like this flower bed could incorporate 4 of those pieces of sandstone from, and it would be a really cool element instead of pouring that as generic concrete, and instead of having,
you've reused this as an artifact from something previous. You're not trying to design the building around it.
and we're not pretending that was a historic flower or a planting bed. We're literally just using these stones as retaining elements, and putting sweet potato vines in there, and lavender, and black-eyed Susans, and all my favorite plants in there. So like that's, at least that's what I'm hearing from this group is you're not asking us to rebuild this. You're just taking elements so that pieces that are salvageable, then we're using it as a bench along where this woman's walking her Dalmatian. Cool things that will feel textured and add to the language of the site.
Yes, plus, but I think having them in the order in which they exist in that context is really important as well. It's not just take the pieces and then recreate a flower bed out of them, which is, for some of them, fine. But a part of that at that scale needs to be preserved. Even, I'm not going to give you a linear feet example, but a portion of it does need to be, I think, retained.
And again, I'm going to pick on that word. I mean, the building has to be taken down. So would you, like, we're not going to be able to keep any, again, from what Brett was mentioning earlier, the existing substructure, existing walls are going to go. So when you say retained, are you arguing for keeping, not touching a wall and preserving it in place, or taking the stone down and putting it back up?
I think we're willing to, what I think my colleagues are saying is that we're willing to work with you on what that is. It could be one, it could be the other. We're not saying it has to be one or the other, but that some degree of it has to be reused.
Yeah, not replace necessarily, but somehow incorporated into the building. And what I see that as doing is an extension of saving the ticket booth, is saying, oh, there was something else here in addition to that ticket booth that one could say, oh, okay, there was a connection here and the rest of that building is gone. But we've left for the future for people to at least take guesses as to, oh, what, I don't know what was here, but there was something else here.
No, I completely respect and understand that. Yeah, and I guess I just wanted to maybe echo a comment from Brett earlier that we frankly don't know. I think it's unclear how much of the stone will survive any removal, right? So that's even that's kind of why, to Marika's earlier point, that 350 square foot number is I don't know if it's optimistic, but it is it needs to be vetted based on what actually is feasible given the condition of the stone as is currently.
You know, and given the condition of the stone, I mean, this isn't really preservation, but sometimes you have to use new material to replicate what was there, like those pilasters at the corner of the building. They're not in particularly great shape. I don't want to have to bring down the apparent quality of this building by putting deteriorated material up there. The people are going to say, oh, that looks kind of beat up and crappy. Sometimes you have to replace with new material to match an older design. So, I mean, I think we would consider a whole range of stuff. So I'm just throwing, we're not telling you to do this. I'm just trying to throw out some things that might work.
No, I appreciate that. That makes sense.
I think too, Jonathan, to address, like, you know, if there's a, you know, reasonable commitment by this construction team to take every effort of care to extract, disassemble those pieces. Of course, no one, you know, we don't know until you guys start getting into it, what is salvageable and what isn't. So I don't know that we need to prescribe X amount.
I see.
It's more just like the commitment that we're in the intention to use those pieces in their new life, their next life, in whatever ways possible. If that's at all clarifying.
No, that I get that. Yeah.
I have another question pertaining not to the historic structure demolition. Is this today, are we just looking at the demolition, or are we looking at the concept of the kind of new aesthetic?
I would like, yeah, feedback on both. So I think it's
But
important.
conceptual, right?
Yeah, conceptual.
I don't think we're gonna ask for a
not-
vote on anything, because we're just gonna
Okay.
come back and, yeah.
But feedback would be welcome and warranted.
So I go back to try to understand the bridge side of the building again.
I think Doug's got lost. But Nia, can you jump in with your feedback that you were about to jump in through the chair?
Yeah, I just, is the changes to the design impetus from cost mostly? Or I know you guys mentioned too that there was
No,
some.
I think, you know, when you look at it, and we'll go to this slide with Doug, but I think it's a lighter, more elegant building than it was before. So you have, to Jonathan's point of stacked boxes, to a cohesive building that still has the same, you know, kind of shape and massing, but using materials that don't feel as heavy. And part of that was also time, and being able to say, okay, we have more time based on some of the factors of financing, and we've been able to work on it longer and like where we're at now more than we were, last time we were in front of you. So this is a kind of a Doug, but if we go back to like a render of the building, we still have that shape, and it's still the same program. I think, for us, it feels like a lighter, more elegant building than the other materials that we had.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, the site elements, going back, what was it now, like a year, maybe more ago, when we first saw the first iteration of this concept, you're still holding true to kind of the same, the components that were as a result of that process in terms of respecting, the church and kind of giving breathing room, the podium component, the tower component. So I guess I'm more focused on the materiality when I review this one. And I think that the imagery on the last slide with kind of showing the way that the different textures and kind of variations. I think it's really compelling. I just feel like, and obviously this is concept, that it's not the renderings. I kind of want a little bit more definition as to like how that would actually, like which of these textures. I don't know, maybe it's just that the renderings feel a little too ill-defined. And I know that that's, you guys don't want to put the cart before the horse in terms of getting so detailed on those renderings, but does that make sense? Like, I feel like there are like a lot of compelling things happening with this texture and this material. But maybe just more, I feel like that's not very helpful. I'm sorry.
Maybe, I think maybe for when we come back, we can try to, because I also think that there's like a couple of different rendering styles in this presentation, and we can try to see what we can do to define them better. I also just wanted to clarify that I feel like the color scheme in here is not exactly the point of this color scheme direction was meant to be that it would kind of look like a patinaed copper type color. I don't think that is coming through with the way that the color scheme is.
I agree. It's hard to read that from the render.
Yeah, but then if you look at the example images on the last slide, I think that is closer to what we have.
Yeah, the best reference for everybody's like that in between section of quarter, phase 2 or 3, where you have that standing seam kind of between where like the Howard Hanna is on the first floor and where that workout facility is. So that picture's in there, but I think for this group that all spends time in the neighborhood, that's the best way to like look at it in real life as opposed to on a screen. And
but
then,
I think that looking at the renderings is something that we can also kind of regroup on and look at how to represent everything as clearly as possible.
Yeah,
I
that imagery is more compelling than the rendering, I guess, is what it boils down to.
I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and it seems like there's a lot of concerns we still have to address with this project. So I would just suggest that we table this or make a motion because we still do have another project, and I want to be respectful of their time as well.
Yes, can I make one comment and then I'll one only on the parking garage? Are you envisioning that being wrapped with the same material that is used on Church and State?
no, it would be a different material, like a metal mesh. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If I can make just a couple of brief comments. I just wanted to say, echo some of Nia's comments. I appreciate the change in materiality, and I think it goes a long way to make this feeling a lot lighter and a lot more cohesive. I appreciate the decoupling of the parking garage and allowing breathing room to occur around the tower itself and all the other elements on the site. I think it makes a much more interesting and more compelling sort of user experience, being able to traverse the site in a really sort of nice way. I think one of the things that I also sort of had the same sort of comment / question about what is the wrapper of the garage, and is it the same as what the Church and State? And not glad to hear that it's going to be a little bit different. I think the one thing that I would say about the tower massing itself is that I think there was something really nice about sort of the breaking down of the scale on the main sort of tall facade, where you had sort of an upper floating element, and then you had sort of the base element. And I think it was really just a matter of sort of the clear glass at that sort of breaking point. I think there was something nice about the fact that in the earlier scheme, it helped to break down the scale of that facade. That's a little bit different in the sort of the updated version. I don't dislike what I'm seeing now, but I think that the previous was maybe a little bit more successful in having it feel more of a scale within the fabric of the neighborhood, and less sort of contradictory to that. And again, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that I picked up on there.
If I could also make just a couple quick comments. when you come back, I would love to have a report from the engineer because I'm sorry, I was not able to be at the site visit, but I feel like a lot of things were conveyed verbally, either there or in the meeting, but I'd like to have that, as a report that we can review. That's pretty typical when we get the demolition request. And then again, with the salvage, like an actual plan. Is the building being documented before it comes down, a written salvage plan to go along with the renderings? And then in terms of the new concepts, I also really do appreciate the garage being detached. But I think that there should be a requirement to show if it's not going to have a mural, exactly what that material will be, because it is then like this big massive block that people driving along the bridge are going to see. And I think that there should be some interesting elements to that since it's no longer attached to the building. So those are my 2 cents.
And just on the point of the report, I believe Steve did send along a written document detailing some of those items, but I don't know if I just want to double check if everybody got that. I can have Nate send that out to everybody.
Yes, I saw that.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I missed that.
All right, so I think we're agreed that we would like to make a motion to table this pending further information. And I think the information that we really need to get past the demolition here is your proposal to reference or salvage, what more precisely do you propose to do, even though we don't know how much stone you're going to be able to get off it. I think if we had a better idea of where and how that was, you're proposing that to occur, would get us past the demolition. In other words, I don't think we need to address in detail the, curtain walls, colors, the facade of the garage. We can come back another time if you don't have that. But if the point is to get on with the demolition, then I think we need a little more detail on how you're going to reference the building that you're demolishing. That makes sense?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. So on that note, would anyone care to make a motion to table?
I'll move the table.
A second?
I'll second.
Okay, Nate, please call the roll.
Okay, Doug Wall,
Aye.
Margaret Land,
Yes.
Antonia Marinucci,
Yes.
Chris Lozier,
Yes.
Alex Frondorf.
Yes.
Okay, so the item is tabled.
Great. Look forward to seeing you back here soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our last item today is St. Ignatius, 1911 West 30th. It's a new sign proposal. Is Ignatius still with us here?
I am.
Yeah, yes, I'm here.
Nate, I have to sign off. I apologize. I think you still have quorum though.
Yeah, we do. It's all good. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Alex.
All right, go ahead whenever you're ready.
I'm Eric with ASI Signage. What we are proposing with St. Ignatius is to, on the side of the field house, that we are going to put the school seal and the name of the field, and then also the name of the track below that. Non-illuminated, fabricated aluminum, 4 inches deep, painted in the school colors. And that's what we're proposing.
All the lettering is 4 inches deep?
Yes.
Well, I don't have an objection to the signage. It's not facing the street, it's facing the track. I think it's a little overstated though. I mean, it's going to make a difference how the building is perceived from Lorraine Avenue, from the street or 30th Street. I think it's a little heavy-handed. I have no objection to calling out Wasmer Field. I think that's just fine, or putting the school crest, coat of arms there before track. But I think that's a little too much, is my opinion. Anyone else have any feelings about that?
Doug, yeah, I would agree with your comments as well.
Like how tall, I can't read your drawing there. How tall are the large letters for Wasserman Field?
Wasserman Field is 4 feet tall.
Holy bananas, that's big, yes.
Yes.
Was there any conversation in working with the administration about different alternatives, or did they come to you and say, we want a big sign that says Wasserman Field? Or I guess sometimes tracking the origin of where the sign came from is helpful. Because if it was half that size, those letters are 2 feet tall and 2 inches thick, I think I'd have no problem with that. But I don't know the backstory to how this came about.
Initially, it came from St. Ignatius asking us to make a large statement on that wall, which, yes, it is. It is a large statement. I agree with you on that. We could reduce it, 25%, go a third or even go a half.
Well, that would be my suggestion is scale it down a little bit, and I think how much, half, 25%, whatever, but I would advise you to go back and ask them to consider scaling it down a bit.
Okay.
Anyone else have any feelings about that?
I agree, Doug. I think the seal is okay architecturally in that position at that size, but the letters themselves, I was hoping to see a little smaller. And then the other thing I was looking for was a detail of how those are going to be attached to the building. We much prefer that goes through the mortar than the brick.
Yeah.
I think, well, is this portion of the building, this is not a historic portion of the building, is it?
No.
Right, because this was built.
It was built in the 90s or
Yes.
early 2000s, I should say.
It was built, I think it was new when I was in high school, so it couldn't have been.
Even if it's not historic, I mean,
Yeah.
I think in
Okay.
respect to the building material, it'd be nicer if it would, so that it could be historic, maybe.
My question is the seal, so is that 120 inches? So it's, is that 10?
Yeah, the seal is currently at 10 feet in diameter.
How high off the ground are all of these letters? Can you give us a elevation height? I'm trying to.
The top of the building is 46 feet.
Look at the stone belt course that goes across there. That's just less than door height. So there's a stone belt course at about 6 feet above the ground. If that helps you scale it a little bit.
Yeah, I think in terms of content, I'm totally agreeable content, just, yeah, I don't know, maybe scaling that sucker down, the whole thing, maybe 30 to 50%, if they're agreeable. I'm guessing they want some robust identification. But
hello, hi, this is.
Go ahead.
Hello, hi, this is Derek. I'm the director of campus operations here at St. Ignatius. The only thing that, at least, I mean, maybe the rendering isn't very good. I don't know if you can scroll to see a better rendering, but I agreed with who was it that mentioned that the seal looks pretty appropriate, but I think we take a step before we go to say 50%, because the Gabor portion of that isn't even legible from, say, across the field. Or the whole intent of the sign is to designate it. Otherwise, it would, this is more of a sign showing that. There we go. I'll go back to that one. I guess it's the only one that we really have. The Gabor portion, maybe it's just a poor representation as far as the rendering or the picture, but the Gabor portion is barely legible. And how tall are, and those letters are at 2 feet. So maybe we take it in an incremental, maybe try 25 or 30%.
Well, who is this? Here's another question. Who is this signage for? Who are we trying to address? Drivers on West 28th Street, Lorraine Avenue, people that are at the Wasmer Field, because they certainly
right now there is no designation of the field itself other than for Gabor track that was dedicated just last fall, who was a former teacher and track coach for the school.
Well, I know the Wasmer family are important donors to the school over the years, and you want to recognize them, of course. But yes, if you want to try going down 25 or 30%, show us. Let's see, because I think that again, the Gabor track. Who are you trying to tell it's Gabor track? People that are kids that are at a track meet, certainly not the fans in the grandstands because they can't see it from the grandstand. So it must be for people that are, either participants in an event or completely outside the fences, who I don't think really care if it's Wasmer's field or anybody else's field. People that need to know. I mean, students, parents, alumni, they all know it's Wasmer people. In fact, isn't there some designation on the scoreboard up at the north end of the field that says Wasmer Field?
Let me see if there is or not. I don't have a current picture of that on me right now.
So anyway, think about it and come back to us with something that's a little less bold.
I have another question. I'm just curious on the actual font choice and also the kerning. One, I'm questioning why there needs to be 2 separate fonts on this. And then also I would be curious if it would be possible to look at an option where it's not the all caps with a wide kerning. I just feel like that to me is part of what makes it look a little bit overly yelling. So that's just another question in my head.
Yes, another option to investigate.
You have a large kind of widely, I don't know, the kerning just feels a little bit sloppy on some of the letters, and then all caps serif, and then title case sans serif underneath it. It just feels like there's like more elements going on for this type of sign than is necessary to me. So that's
a good point, Marika. The different fonts. I don't know why that would be. It would seem to make more sense to be consistent with the font style.
That was designed in that manner to separate the 2 different individuals, so that the Wasmer Field was one and the Gabor track was the other.
So I think that's self-evident through the.
Self-evident. They're both hidden. They're in different sizes. There's like a million things going on that makes it clear that they're different. So I don't think that you also need different font case and different font choice to make that clear. Anybody that looks at that sign is going to be able to tell it's the West Wasmer Field and it's the
two separate things.
I also think from a presentation perspective, perhaps showing it on the photos that you have lower in the presentation, like the one that's labeled view from sport field, might be a more effective scale for us to understand how the elements are interacting with like human size scale, like the door and the steps and the height on the building. And or that one you have that's kind of coming as if you're going down Lorraine at 28th. I would be interested in seeing how visible the sign is over that 6-foot fence you guys have that often has big vinyl graphics on it. Like, is that sign meant to be visible over that sign so that someone coming in to drop their kid off or come to a sporting event is going to see it and identify it? So it's back to the same kind of overlapping question. Is this for identifying visitors or is it for donor recognition kind of thing? Or both? Clearly both, but.
Another completely different way to address this would be if it's in fact for people coming, visiting the school to identify the donor. You know, there's the planting bed along LORAIN, you know, just inside the fence. I believe the fence is right along the sidewalk line. So maybe some kind of pylon sign, you know, located, you know, along LORAIN Avenue would be a good identifier, because there is a monument sign at the West 30th Street campus entrance that identifies the school. And I don't recall if there's anything on else on LORAIN, the LORAIN elevation of the building. I don't believe there is any other signage, but I mean, there are other ways that one could address this, but certainly I think the one thing we've all reacted to is the overall scale of this, and you know, and then thinking about, you know, as Antonia and Marika said, who is this directed toward? Who's supposed to be reading this? Who's your audience?
Well, we can definitely make those changes and represent to you, showing the various sizes and those different locations of where to see the sign from. Both
All right,
that
well,
intersection of LORAIN and 28th and from the field.
Okay. Well, then we look forward to seeing a revised iteration of this.
In terms of the serif font choice here, I'm just curious where that's coming from, because it seems to me that every font in the St. Ignatius logo is a very simple sans serif. Is that right?
I do believe so. I don't recall where that came
was more
from.
for Derek, but I don't know. I guess a broad suggestion. I don't know what the staffing looks like at St. Ignatius, but if there is any staff graphic designer who could take a look at this and kind of look at how to make this signage feel consistent with the brand of the St. Ignatius graphics overall, I think that would be a valuable use of time.
So here is an example of that for you to look at. I just got this in the mail.
Okay.
I have to be an alumnus. My 50th anniversary celebration is coming up this year, which is, I think that's what that is about. I haven't opened it yet, but you can see this is a serif font next to the logo, and it's handsome font and so forth. So I think if one were to try to do that sign in a font that's more consistent with the school's identity program,
right,
that would be great.
So if you were to take that font and that spacing and kerning and mimic that with this sign, I think with all of the letters in this sign, I think even that would be probably better.
Yes. Okay, any additional comments from the committee? I think, Eric, you have an idea of where we want to go with this, what we would like to see?
Yes.
Okay.
So then, Eric, are you comfortable with us tabling this item for today and having you back whenever you're ready to make these or present the changes again?
I would say yes for me. I don't know where Derek stands from St. Ignatius.
I think so. Eric, yes, I have I agree with some of their statements, and so I think we can have a call with Angela and we can go over, especially like maybe reducing the caps. I think that's going to make a big impact on the loudness of the sign. So
great. And would someone care to make a motion to table?
I can move to table.
Do
I'll
we have a
second. I'll second.
All right, Nate, please call the roll.
All right, the motion is to table. Doug Wall,
Aye.
Margaret Land,
Yes.
Antonia Marinucci,
Yes.
Chris Lozier,
Yes.
Marika Clark.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. And that is our final item on the agenda today. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Concludes our meeting. All right.
Ready?
Yes, everyone. Have a great day.